at the beginning. Here we go. Our review of Thrawn Ascendancy Chaos Rising. All right, so after this is the fourth book from, I don't know why I did that, from fourth canon book, I should say, from Timothy Zahn, dealing with his favorite character, one of our favorite characters, Thrawn. And let me get all this set up. As I'm trying to do this, I'm running into issues. There we go. Thank you. So again, this is going to be a spoiler review. So if you guys haven't read Thrawn Ascendancy yet, please, you can come back later after you've read it. Or if you don't mind spoilers, there'll be some spoilers. I'm not going to say that there won't be. But yeah, we'll go at it. We'll talk about a quick glance at the book, main characters, reveals, how the book is structured. Then we'll do our quick summary of the book, ending with our final thoughts and our rating of the book. So let's go at it. So I don't have my book here with me. I don't know why, but we're lucky enough to get the one with the blue pages. Look at that. This is not my picture. This is from StarWars.com when they revealed they were doing blue pages. It's so beautiful. And I said it before, the only reason, because I was hesitant about getting this Thrawn book, because we've already read 3 Thrawn books. I didn't want to keep reading more Thrawn. When I heard they were doing the blue pages, I caved. They got me with the blue pages. They are beautiful and add a little tint there that if you're tired from reading, it's been a long day, those blue pages do wake you up and you keep going. And thank you, Kat, for saying, Alberto, always a great show. Thank you. Natalie, yes, this is a happy place. You guys been here. We had fun. I was in your show. We had a lot of fun. So yes, there's no reason to be mad. We're talking about Star Wars. Unless your favorite character dies, and then you can be sad, but not mad with other Star Wars friends out there. All right, so like I was saying, this is the first in a new Thrawn trilogy from author Timothy Zahn. He's already wrote 3 Thrawn books for Lucasfilm or Disney, but those weren't, I wouldn't call them trilogies per se. There were 3 of them, but they weren't the same story all the way through. It kind of bounced between the books, Rebels, and then back to the books. So I wouldn't consider them an exact trilogy. So this is the first in a trilogy for Timothy Zahn where he can expand on his famous character, like I said. So we'll see how that plays a difference. I do like that they used that term a long time ago, beyond a galaxy far, far away. So you have an idea that, yes, this is Star Wars, but it's not the galaxy that we know. Like I mentioned before, I do love the blue pages. They also include a dramatis personae, a lot of names, a lot of weird names, as we know, planets, characters, family structure. So it's very important, not important, but it's a nice touch to have that at the beginning of the book, especially for those first few pages, because they start throwing a lot of those terms quickly. So you can just refer back. Once you get a feel for it, then you're good to go. But a nice touch to have those there. Yes, it was a pretty book. We learned that what the Chiss called the unknown region, they call it the chaos. So what's their unknown region? They call the chaos. There's 9 ruling families who are basically in charge of the government, and they are called the Syndicure. We have the Expansionary Defense Fleet, which defend the Chiss Ascendancy borders and learn who was out there and if they pose any threat to them. And the book is divided between chapters, which are, of course, the present time, and memories, which is Thrawn's past, and not just his past, but the other characters. And we'll talk about a little bit more about memories in a minute, but that's how the book is structured. Chapters, memories, chapters, memories. So main characters for our Chiss heroes, if you want to call them that, we have Thrawn, we have Commodore Auralani, which we met in Thrawn Treason, the last Thrawn book from Timothy Zahn. We have Thali. I don't know if it's Thalias or Thalias. I'll go with Thalias. She's an ex-Skywalker that Thrawn comforted when she lost her third sight. And Sherry, who's the new Skywalker that helps them along the way, and Supreme General Bakif from the Chiss villains, or people that are from the Chiss Ascendancy that don't like Thrawn too much. We have Thurfian, which is also from the Myth family, and Sis Talmus, who is from the Irisi family. And these are two of the high-ranking members from the Chiss ruling families, which we said there's 9 of them, 9 ruling families. And the main villains are Yif the Benevolent, who's the leader of the Ni Khardum dynasty, Kilori, who's a pathfinder that Thrawn has hired before and has helped him navigate the chaos, and of course the Ni Khardum dynasty, Destiny. Destiny or Dynasty? Destiny. Again, weird names, very difficult to pronounce, especially with my accent, so sorry. This is one book that maybe the audio might have worked a little bit better, but then you don't get those blue pages. All right. So some of the reveals we get in Thrawn Ascendancy are, we learned Thrawn's born name was Vuraun, Vuraun, Vuraun. I don't know if they said in Legends what his original name was, if it's the same. So if any one of you guys out there knows, just let me know. The Ascendancy has a policy. Ascendancy policy was to do whatever was necessary to avoid preemptive combat against potential adversaries, which to me right away reminded me of Star Trek. Very Starfleet, don't attack unless you're attacked before. We're only here to gather information. And this comes into play a few times during the book, as Thrawn is always skimming the lines of what constitutes attacking or provoking something just to get his way. And of course that doesn't get him into trouble because he's Thrawn, but it does get people mad at him. And then Natalie, thank you. I think I speak for all of us when I say we like your, well, thank you. I think it's one of those things when you hear your own voice play back, you're like, ugh, that's how I sound. But I get used to it after a few minutes. But thank you. That way I can keep talking about it. And don't feel bad that I'm rambling. All right, so what else? There's mention, this was interesting and cool, mention that the Chiss were involved or participated in the war between the Galactic Empire and the Sith Empire. That has to be Old Republic. So here we go. Even farther back than the High Republic, we have our first mention of possible High Republic in Star Wars canon. So again, which side did the Chiss fall on? Did they help the Empire? Was it the Empire or Republic at that point? Did they help the Sith Empire? So I get a great reveal. That's something I really like. But just a quick mention about it. So hopefully it does come to play either in the later books or something else down the line. Pathfinders, which I mentioned, Kilori was a Pathfinder. They could follow other Pathfinders through hyperspace. We learned that the Great Presence is what Kilori uses to navigate hyperspace. We know that the Chiss have the Skywalkers, which use third sight. Now we have the Pathfinder calling it the Great Presence. And all of this, I believe this is just their way of using the Force or channeling the Force in some sort. So we have third sight, Great Presence, and the Force. The Chiss have a reputation in the chaos of always thinking that they were far better than all other fishes and that they didn't care about anyone else. Not surprising, we know Thrawn, he thinks he's better and smarter than everyone. So I guess every Chiss had the same reputation out there. And what they call a galaxy far, far away that we know, they call it lesser space. Again, going to that, we're better. That's lesser space. We don't need them. But they know that there's a massive war going on, being waged by two sides. And one of them mostly uses droids. So this is happening almost at the same time as the Clone Wars. All right, so those were some of the reveals. And then, so what's the setup for the book? So there is a mysterious attack on the Chiss Ascendancy on their home world of Celia, and Supreme General Bakif needs to find out the cause. And one of the questions he wants answered is, was the attack on their home planet to distract them about something else that had already happened? So you have the 9 ruling families who want to be more involved, not just in politics, but in the military. And then you have the military side just arguing, just thinking about the important thing is the attack on our home planet. We don't care about anything else. But Bakif, and then he enlists Thrawn into this. This seems weird. It was a small attack. It didn't do anything to us. I think they're just trying to distract us. He wants to find out what that attack, the other attack was, and see what's going on. So he wants Thrawn to help investigate a derelict ship, a broken down ship that they had found 2 days earlier, which turned out to be a refugee ship. Everyone was dead. They didn't know why or who. So Thrawn and Bakif thought the attack on Celia, on their home planet, was just a distraction for attacking this refugee ship. So Talia, which you know she was a Skywalker before, lost her third sight, so she couldn't navigate through hyperspace anymore. She enlists herself into the Spring Hawk, which is the Star Destroyer, the battleship that Thrawn is in, as a caregiver for our new Skywalker, Sherry. So Talia was appointed into the Spring Hawk by Thrawn, which we know is one of the Myth family members that has a vendetta against Thrawn, as a spy to report back to him about Thrawn and his dealings. So again, this the politics behind it, that Thrawn doesn't do politics. That's the thing he doesn't know how to do. So he's good at military, very bad at politics. So from the beginning, there is a conflict, like I mentioned, between the military fleet and the aristocrat, which are the high-ranking members of the 9 ruling families, and who wields more power in the ascendancy. Family politics, something we are not used to in Star Wars. A little bit Game of Thrones, like we've heard Game of Thrones being sent out as a inspiration recently for more Star Wars stuff coming. So I do think they're pulling a little bit from it. A little bit more info about what Skywalker's abilities are. Not really, just not abilities, but they do get nightmares about getting lost during navigation. So that's something that they always have in the back of their minds. They finish, they go to rest, they can go to sleep. They a lot of times have that recurring nightmare about getting lost and not being able to find their way back. So that's the setup for the book. So like I mentioned, it's divided between chapters and memories. And when it goes into the memories, some of the things we learn are that the capital city of the Chiss, of the Ascendancy, is called Splar, Csplar, Splar. So we know their home planet is Celia, their capital is Splar, and it was mostly abandoned as the populace had to retreat underground to escape changes to the planet's surface. Most of the Chiss moved to other planets. Of the 4 billion that used to live on Celia, now only about 60 to 70 million still live there. Most of them are underground, but once in a while they have people coming up to the surface and still showing like there's some life and mobility in their capital city, all in a front in case someone comes to attack them. They waste a lot of their ammunition and ships and everything. They wasted attacking an empty city, still giving that imagination that there's people living out there. This doesn't come into play again in the book. Again, this is a trilogy, so I think this is just a setup for the following books, but it doesn't come back to play here, but it just is mentioned in the memories. Also in memories, we learned that Sistalmos, which was from the Irisi family, wanted to bribe Thrawn into leaving the Myth family and joining the Irisi family by making him a trial born instead of a merit adoptive. So Thrawn is not born into the Myth family. He's adopted because of his military mind as a merit adoptive, and then they can go up in their strata in their family, the next one being a trial born and being officially a Myth. So they wanted to just leave the Myth. They don't like you over there, come join the Irisi, but they can have 2 trial borns. They had Thalia, which at this point she's called Ciara, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But once she became a Commodore in the military fleet, she'll have to leave the Irisi family. So they were trying to bring another one, being Thrawn, because those families are always battling who has more power in the government and also in the military. So they wanted to take a step over the Myth. So again, that family dynamic, family battles. But it didn't work, of course. He was made a trial born by the Myth anyways. Thorfinn and Sistalmos do meet to discuss Thrawn, and that the Risi family was trying to recruit him away. But both him, Thorfinn, and Sistalmos saw that Thrawn could bring ruin to the Myth family, but most importantly to the Ascendancy. And they agreed to keep an eye on him to try and bring him down. Because for the Chiss, there's nothing more important than the Ascendancy and what that means. So if they have to bring everything down and other people down just to keep their name and the name of the Ascendancy high and keep that safe, they will do whatever they want. So that's where most of the things we learn through the memories. There's a lot of other memory things we'll talk about in a few minutes. My thoughts about the use of the memory vehicle to explain the plot of the story. All right, so what's the story? The short version. I had a longer version, like 5 pages, and I couldn't go so long. This is a book like Thrawn. If you skip things, you're gonna get lost. So I did my best trying to keep this a little bit shorter. So when Thrawn starts to investigate the attack on the Chiss home planet, he finds a second mysterious ship with more dead passengers in a nearby system. After visiting one of the mining stations close to this planet, which was under blockade by some warships, he ran into some Pakosh, which were the people from the nearby planet, and he realized that the refugee ship, the second ship, and the Chiss Ascendancy were all attacked by the same people. He also found out that the refugee ship and the second ship belonged to the planet that was under blockade right there. The system or the planet was the Rapak system, and the attackers were of course, the Nicardum. And the Nicardum were the ones blockading the planet and attack the Chiss home planet. So who are the Nicardum and what do they do? So the Nicardum Destiny, Yif the Benevolent is their leader. He was going planet to planet, meeting with planetary leaders and telling them about the benefits of joining the Nicardum Destiny. And if not, their planet would just basically undergo a blockade. It would just surrounded with warships and they won't be able to do anything. So Thrawn and Aralani thought that the Nicardum were expanding into Chiss Ascendancy space, conquering, subjugating worlds closer and closer to the Ascendancy, to then launch an attack on them. And the next planet that they were eyeing was and this is one I can't say, Leoane regime, I'm going to say. So Thrawn believed that the Nicardum were taking over systems to surround the Ascendancy before attacking them. You have Leoane to the north, Rapak to the east, Urge is another planet later in the book, southeast more or less, and then the Patatus to the south. But they didn't have a lot of evidence that the Patatus were under Yiv's control. So Thrawn believes that there are still 4 other nations that may help him corroborate his suspicion about Nicardum surrounding the Chiss Ascendancy. So he speaks with an old friend, the Garwian Frangelic, and he learns that the vague homeworld of Crimea fits this description. So while searching for a world that had resisted the Nicardum to learn how they resisted him and what he can do to defeat them, they run into some droid ships. They saw another small craft doing some reconnaissance on the droid ships, and it turns out to be Duja, and she was looking for a Nubian spaceship. So Duja is one of Paramidala's handmaidens that was introduced in Thrawn alliances. So she asked Thrawn if she supports the Republic or the Separatists. He says neither. So she hightails it out of there. I'm not going to help you. Thrawn follows her, and they end up in Batuu. Batuu, we know, Galaxy's Edge. It's been on a bunch of other books, including Thrawn Treason. Alliances, sorry. So after a while of being there, the Nubian ship appears, goes into the planet, and 3 days later, the warrior that Thrawn was hoping for, because he was out there looking for help, arrived, and who it is? None other than General Skywalker himself, Anakin Skywalker of the Galactic Republic. So Thrawn tells Anakin that the only reason for him being out there was to learn more about the war so that it didn't reach the Ascendancy, but that he could help him find the lost ship that he was looking for. So they go on, meet on the planet, and after that, it stops there. Everything else about that encounter happens in another book, in Thrawn Alliances. So if you haven't read Thrawn Alliance, and you see this, oh yes, Anakin Skywalker's here. No, you gotta go read the other book. All right, so we learned that they were there for 5 weeks, I think. So then Thrawn thought that he could convince the Vax in Crimea that Yif was just using them, and that maybe he could convince them to help the Chiss instead defeat the Nicardum and Yif. Thrawn goes to Crimea to rescue Thalias and Cherry that have been captured by Yif. And things happen about after that, there's the big battle at the end. Thrawn is trying to find out who Yves serves. He doesn't believe that Yves is the mastermind behind it. Someone he has to report to someone who he's trying to find out who the real big bad is. The battle starts. The Vac were staying out of the battle, and then Orlani, who had come to rescue Thrawn and everyone, asked them to give humanitarian aid to some broken down Chiss ship. They agreed because the Vacs are someone that they have to go through all the possible options before making a decision. That's why they haven't fallen to Yves the Benevolent's hands. So they're going through all the options. They go and send help. Hey, this is a humanitarian aid. They're off limits. Don't fire on them. Yves doesn't care. Then Icarium shut down the Vac spaceship, and that's when they say, no, these people are not here to help. They're here to hurt us, so we're gonna start helping the Chiss instead. And that's when the battle takes over, or takes a turn, I should say. And then Thrawn had equipped his freighter that he had with a Republic energy shield that he brought back from that trip to Batu, which again we learn about this in Thrawn alliances. He uses that ship to crash into the Nicardum, into Yves' main battleship, and then he rescues, or he leaves with Orlani, Cherry, and Yves. They take him back to the Ascendancy. So then the book ends with the Chiss were interrogating Yves to see what he knows. Thrawn leaves. He says his goodbyes and leaves. We don't know where he's going. And then Kilori, which is the Pathfinder that had helped Thrawn at the beginning, where he was actually working with Yves and the Nicardum. He's by himself on a spaceship with his great presence going through hyperspace, comes out of it all dark, doesn't know where he is, and there's just a voice over the comlink or the stereo, I guess, from his ship asking what happened and all this stuff. And then we learn that this is the mastermind behind it. Here I'm expecting this is the big twist, and it's going to be Palpatine. I thought the Emperor was behind it. Darth Sidious was playing everyone from even the dark regions or the unknown regions is playing everyone. No, it's someone else named Jixtus. And there the book ends. Whew, and that's it. That's Thrawn, Ascendancy, Chaos Rising. That's my quick overview of the story. All right, so this wouldn't be a review if I didn't give you my final thoughts and what I thought about the book. So there's a quote in this book by Thrawn, and he says, "I wish I could explain it. I can see it, I can understand it, but I can't really put it into words." This is when he's asked, how do you know all this? Just studying someone's history, art history, how can you know what they're going to do military? And he says this quote, "I see it, I understand it, I can't put it into words, I can't explain it." That's how I felt sometimes reading Thrawn's plan and attack vectors. You gotta trust Thrawn because you're not gonna understand everything. And when he's talking about the Vax and how he knows that they don't commit to a single point and they have to take every single consideration while at the same time being proactive for everyone's individuality. There's a blanket, let's say, and it's being woven, or there's two artists working on this piece at the same time. The lengths of the corners are different, so that's how he knows that there's individuality, but at the same time they still match, but they take different, the colors match, but the palette is different. It's all this, it doesn't make sense. Like he says, he sees it, I'll take your word for it. There's some things about Thrawn that you just gotta believe. Yes, in a nutshell, that's what the book is. And again, I took like 3 pages away, because if not, this will be a 2-hour review. So a very entertaining book. I will say that a very good plot. It made me come back every time I put it down. I just wanted to keep reading. Again, the blue pages do help, but it is an entertaining book. It expands the Star Wars universe. It's, again, the unknown regions. We don't know anything about it, basically. Ascendancy, the Chaos, the Nicardum Destiny, the Vac homeworld of Crimea. There's a lot of world building that Timothy Zahn does that is great. I'm not going to take that away from him. There's no Jedi, no Sith, no Empire, no Rebellion. Just those little, the droids are here, Anakin Skywalker, Republic, boom, that's it. but it still feels like Star Wars. So it expands the Star Wars universe that we always want to see that. Like I mentioned before, the names of the characters are a bit confusing to read and to pronounce. They change, the names of the characters change between memories and chapters. It takes a while to learn everyone's name. For example, you have their born name, their married adoptive name, their child born name. We have this character, Iris Arlani, also known as Ciara, also known as Arlani. So one character with three names. Iris Arlani is her Irisi name when she's a married adoptive or something. Yes. Ciara during her memories where she's still part of the Irisi, but that's that's how what she's called instead of going to the whole name. And then when she becomes a Commodore, drops the Irisi name, then she becomes just Arlani. So one character with three names. You have Thrawn, which is also called Mithran Nurod or whatever. And at some point, the last three words of the name also change. So it is confusing sometimes to know who's who. Names of the other species and planets are also confusing, like I mentioned. It does get a bit confusing if you leave the book for a few days. That did happen to me. Especially if you just read a memory, you leave the book, come back 2 days later, and it's a chapter. You're remembering what happened in the past, now you're in the future, in the present, and same vice versa. It'll be good for you just to go back, reread some of the last couple of pages, just so you get back on track of what was going on. It is similar to the first canon Thrawn book in that it goes from battle to battle. You're learning more about Thrawn's tactics and how he maneuvers adversaries and difficult situations. But I wouldn't recommend this book as the first Thrawn book to come into. If you haven't read a Thrawn book in canon and you say, let me just pick this one up and see what all the hoopla is about, I don't recommend this one. It starts right away with Skywalkers. There's no mention of what Skywalkers do or who they are. This is mentioned in Thrawn alliances. So if you don't know and you pick this book up and you say, oh, there's Skywalkers and they're not from the Skywalker family and they travel through hyperspace, it doesn't make sense because it's not explained. Same thing. There's Anakin Skywalker comes into play. So like I mentioned before, if you haven't read the other Thrawn books and you see, oh, Anakin Skywalker is here, great, let's see what happens. And they don't mention it anyway, you say, yeah, 5 weeks pass and now Thrawn's back, but then why do you bring Anakin into this? So if you haven't read the other Thrawn books, you're going to be a bit lost and maybe a bit disappointed that those threads weren't continued. I do miss Eli Vanto, which we met in the first canon Thrawn book. He was a great supporting character, and even though we have some good supporting characters here, I didn't feel connected to any of them as I was to Eli in that first book. I lost myself. So yes, complementary character. Here we do have a group of complementary and supporting characters that complement Thrawn, like Orlani, Sherry, and Bakif, and Talias. That they are well written, but they don't challenge Thrawn or his decisions. They all go along with him and his wild theories and plans just because he's Thrawn and because they have worked in the past. His adversaries inside the Ascendancy, Sistalmus and Thurfian, I don't care if they succeed or not. They're not written in a way that you would root for them or cheer for them when they try to corner or bring Thrawn down. You always cheer for Thrawn. They didn't do a lot for me. The memories, which I mentioned before, they felt as a way to explain that was what Thrawn was about to do was possible because he did it before, just in a smaller scale. So yeah, this plan looks pretty wild, but don't worry, he did it before, so it's fine. So let's finish up. So although I did enjoy this book and my time reading it, I'm not sure how excited I am for the follow-up Thrawn books. All 4 canon Thrawn books so far, at least for me, this is just my thoughts, have been very similar in that Thrawn really never loses a battle It's never really taken by surprise. It's always 5 steps ahead of everyone. The first Thrawn book does show him losing a few battles as he learns the ways of the Imperial ways, but after that, not really. So no matter what he does and how many of his own people he pisses off, he keeps getting promoted and his indiscretions are given a pass because he produces military results. Here, Timothy Zahn has more freedom as he's writing for a time period that we really don't know in a different part of the galaxy with no connection to the known story of Star Wars. But the story still revolves around a new adversary that only Thrawn can beat mentally, and no one else knows it. Only Thrawn knows the situation and really knows what's going on and the ultimate reason behind it. So it is a good story, but it did feel, at least for me, a little bit repetitive from the other 3 Thrawn books. Thrawn against one guy that's just too smart for everyone else except for Thrawn. So there's always someone from either the Ascendancy or the Empire in the other 3 canon Thrawn books that try to bring him down but can't. So this also happens here. It's fun and new the first few times, or the first time, but after you've read it for 4 books, I want something different from these stories. So unlike R. Lani, Sherry, Bakif, and Talias, who follow Thrawn almost blindly because he has won the day time and time again, how I feel after finishing this book is that I did enjoy it, but just because it's Thrawn and Timothy Zahn writing, I can't keep coming back to more Thrawn books if they don't change that type of stories they keep telling. Very entertaining book. It just felt like something I've read before from Thrawn and Timothy Zahn at this point after 3 other Thrawn books. So I do hope that they change it. I don't know how excited I am or if I'm going to go and pick up the other 2 Thrawn books that are coming. Unless Del Rey is listening to this and do send me an advanced copy for me to review. Wink! Whew. All right, so Dale goes on to say that I like how he sees things coming together, then he disassembles it based on the people's art. Again, it's great, and that's what we love about Thrawn. That's how everyone that I didn't read the Expanded Universe, the Legends Thrawn books, but everything else, he studies the art. It's great. It just feels like the same thing over and over. And yes, Eli Vanto was a great character. I can't believe they didn't bring him for the other 2 Thrawn books. We'll see. There has to be something else with Eli, hopefully. Okay, so how do I rate this book? And here, can we just go with stars? 3 out of 5 stars, 4 out of 5 stars. This is Radio Rebellion, a Star Wars podcast, and we do things a little bit different. So let's talk first about this story, and we give this story 4 Imperial probe droids out of 5. Yes, we give out probe droids, not stars. So like I said, this story, it is well written. There aren't any plot holes. There are a few things that are unresolved, but I do believe it's because we have 2 more Thrawn books coming in the near future, and all those things will get expanded and explained there. And Dale, I agree with you. Send those advanced copies ASAP. I like you, Dale. All right, so new characters. So we do get some new characters introduced, and here we're going to give them 3 probe droids out of 5. Like I mentioned, we have Sherry, Aurora Lani, Bakif, Gift the Benevolent, Thurfian, Sistalmus. I don't count Aurora Lani as a new character. She was introduced a few books ago. Good characters, well written, but I didn't feel a connection to them too great to give them more than 3 stars. After that, we go to if it expands the canon or canon connection, and only 2 stars. But 2 stars. I just went back on my own review. 2 probe droids, but that's fine because this book was never supposed to connect to canon. It's supposed to expand the Star Wars universe, which we're gonna talk next. So only 2 probe droids in canon connection, but that's fine because that's not what this book or this trilogy is about. But this is what it was about, and it is expanding the Star Wars universe, and it does expand the Star Wars universe great. So I give it 4 probe droids out of 5. Like I mentioned, this is the Chaos, the Chiss Ascendancy, lesser space, everything else. So it does expand the Star Wars universe a lot, and it does feel like Star Wars, even though it is in a completely different part of the galaxy. And finally, we have ease of reading. So for ease of reading, I'll give it 3 probe droids. So even though I did mention it does get a bit confusing between the memories and the chapters, and the weirdness of the names of the characters and the planets and species, it is a very good book. The way it's written, you can follow it. So it is not too difficult to follow, but it does have a few weird names, and the memories and chapters can get confusing if you're taking a few days relaxing and not reading it. So only 3 probe droids out of 5. So my overall rating for Thrawn Ascendancy Chaos Rising is 3.5 probe droids out of 5. So again, entertaining book. I did like it. I don't know if I'm going to go ahead and pre-order the next Thrawn book, but we'll see.